It's 7 o'clock. I call to order the July 19th meeting of the Los Altos Planning and Transportation Commission. For the record, please note that all commissioners are here except for Commissioner Bodnar. Okay. Is there anybody who would like to make a public comment on an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to the consent calendar, which deals with the minutes of our last meeting, July 5th. Does anybody on the commission have comments, additions, or corrections to the minutes?
I do. On study session item number 3, I'd like to make sure that the words that I believe were used, that the building should focus on being a retail building with office above, as opposed to being an office building with retail below.
Is that an addition that was not included?
That was not included. It was sort of alluded to. I think it was under number 3, support for retail emphasis. But I think I'd like to put I did hopefully put emphasis on that during the meeting, and I would like the minutes to reflect that, please.
Any other additions or corrections? Yes, Jim.
I had an addition on item number 3. I want to specifically spell out that we wanted to have an improvement as well as just a further examination about the entryway signage at Foothill and Main Street.
What page are you on, please?
Page.
No,
2.
I've got direction or input. You want the input or the direction part?
Input.
Input. Thank you. Other comments? Can I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve as amended.
Second? Anybody?
Second.
All right, we'll take it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any abstention?
That would be me. I was absent.
Thank you. Okay. We have an item on a public hearing, which is, the first one is 12 UP02, 151 First Street. It's a use permit application. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, you may. Thank you. I'm filling in for Planner Dahl this evening. This is a use permit application for a commercial recreation use, 151 First Street. This was formerly occupied by a health food store. It's across the street from Safeway. And the proposed use is for a video arcade to take the large part of the building, and then some of their ancillary office uses will be located in the back parts of the building. This is a conditional use in this district, and so we have to make findings regarding the appropriateness of the location of the use, and also findings that it's not going to be unreasonably that it won't unreasonably affect neighboring properties. There is an alley behind it and multifamily residential properties just across the alley. So when we were reviewing the use permit, we paid particular attention to that relationship and worked with the applicant to develop some conditions of approval that we thought would be appropriate to minimize some of the noise that this kind of a use could present. There are some openings on the building that face the back parking lot. We found that if those were made as emergency access only, that would help direct the activities to the parking plaza side and or the front on First Street. And then additionally, we developed a condition to require signage in the back parking lot where discouraging noise and loud music and slamming of doors and that sort of thing. We also developed a condition to prohibit the consumption of alcoholic beverages in the recreation use. It's not intended there, but in talking about it with the police chief, we felt that might be an appropriate restriction for this type of a use. And we've also included conditions that limit the hours to the operator's normal hours, except there are special events that might be planned, and those could go till 10 o'clock. In summary, we found that this is a desirable use for the downtown area. We don't have many land uses that are geared towards the youth, and I don't think we have any commercial recreation downtown. So it is unique, and we think it's an appropriate use, helps strengthen the economic vitality of the area and bring different users to downtown as well as the families. We felt with the conditions that it would be maintain an appropriate relationship among the commercial and the residential border there. And with that, we are recommending that you approve this use permit. Procedurally, this type of an application rests with this commission. If the commission, your action is final in this appeal to the council. If you have any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them. Thank you.
I have a question. David, do we have any noise limit ordinances or standards we use when it comes to any kind of establishment, be it a hangout for 8-year-olds who unfortunately don't have the opportunity to drink alcoholic beverages, which I'm sure they'll be upset about, versus, for example, a bar and grill where the kids are older than 8 and they do have the opportunity to drink alcohol. Do we have noise ordinances, or are there any issues that we've had in the past that we can point to as being a problem in either kind of location, venue?
We have a noise ordinance that prohibits disturbances across the property line, and we generally don't have problems with businesses violating that. And when we do, the police department is very responsive, and that's been the way of enforcing it. It really hasn't come up a lot downtown. The only thing I can remember was a use on El Camino Real, where there was a nightclub use that got out of control. And, they were the police department involved themselves in the enforcement of that, and the operator eventually complied. And,
Okay, so in this particular project, it sounds like, most pun intended, it sounds like the noise will be contained inside the building. Are doors going to be allowed to be left open, or is that sort of part of the condition that doors stay closed? Or
I think the way the building's designed is I don't think the windows on the back are operable. The door is meant to be closed, although we could specify that. Our condition refers to its use as emergency access only. But we could add to that it remain closed, and that would definitely control the noise better. But I should point out that back of the building does go into the office use portion of the building, so I wouldn't expect a lot of noise in that area. So,
okay, thank you.
Jim?
Question. The restriction on hours, is that something that is typical of downtown properties? Is it really something that's considered here because of the residential use behind the alley?
It's not something that's typically applied, but when we have use permits, we have that ability to. It's something that the operator has offered these hours as something they could live with, and so we think it's good to memorialize that in the conditions, because this use permit, if approved, would run with the land, and so as long as this building was in place, a different operator could go in there, and they might have different ideas on how to run an arcade. And so we thought it would be important to include those hours here. And there's something else I would add, that with use permits, they are discretionary, and there is an ability if the property owner isn't able to maintain the conditions of the use permit, they can be called up to this body and the council and revoked if necessary. That's something that's reserved for
Other commissioners? Okay, then is the applicant here and would like to make a statement?
Yes, please.
Before she starts, anybody who hasn't turned off your cell phone, please do it.
And I'd also like to add, before where she starts, we received 5 letters via email in support of this use, and they're on.
These are the ones that were printed out and left for us on the dais?
Yes, that's right.
Hi, my name is Mary Heffernan. I'm a local Los Altos resident and a business owner. I own and operate a few family-friendly establishments in town, one being Bumble, which is a restaurant on First Street. Will be directly next to Area 151. And second is Play at the old Linden Tree location that is kind of a homespun children's museum type place for families to gather and have a safe place to play. The background with wanting to open an arcade next to Bumble is that I feel like we've got a great establishment with Bumble. We serve really healthy, organic food. We have a beer and wine license so parents can relax. But there's a certain age where children age out of enjoying the environment at Bumble. We've got, a playroom and a sandbox, but as soon as they get to be about 8 to 15, that's not so much fun anymore. So the idea is that these two businesses would have a symbiotic relationship where the preteens and teens can finish a meal with their parents and then maybe go play at the arcade for a while their parents sit and relax, or the parents play with them. My husband and I have found that we have a lot of fun playing the arcade games too. So my name again is Mary Heffernan. This is a picture of my youngest daughter who's not very happy. We put her in as a prop in one of the games. Our goal with Area 151 is to provide the Los Altos community with an exciting, fun-filled environment for adults, teens, and families. Hoping for a safe place that teenagers especially can gather. I see a lot of teens downtown kind of wandering where they can get frozen yogurt or ice cream, and a lot of times end up on benches or parking lots. So we're hoping to really support a group gathering place that's safe and supervised. Most of our games are not, 100% of our games are redemption-based games. They're not video-based, so not the traditional, kind of dark Pac-Man games. They are team building, Pop-A-Shot, or we have like a giant wall-sized Connect 4. So a lot of them kind of foster kids working together or some competition. When you come in, you can go to the next one. Area 151 is focused on family fun recreation with token games. So you come in, you buy tokens, you play the games, you earn tickets, and then we have a prize station with high-end prizes. We're trying to go for the stuff that you actually want to take home, not that ends up in the garbage by the time you get there. And the location will allow for parents and teens to gather together. Well, I'll show you the site plan in a minute, but we have an outdoor courtyard that will have tables and chairs, wireless internet, so everybody can kind of coexist together, whether or not they're playing games or just taking a minute to sit and relax. The staffing, we plan to have 1 to 3 employees. It's a fairly easy business to staff. 1 employee at most times will circulate between working the prize redemption and fixing any games that might be broken. Busy times we'll have 2 employees, so 1 can do prizes, 1 can do supervising. And for special events, we anticipate it'll be a popular spot for birthday parties, possibly even, corporate type fun team building events in the evenings. But staffing would probably be limited to 2 to 3 people at any given time. Hours of operation, as you heard, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. daily. And if we had an event at night, we would respect the 10 p.m. Seems like a reasonable time the party would be closing down anyway. The site layout. So as you mentioned, the alley neighbors in the back are sheltered by a large parking area, and then the part of the building that will be used as office and storage. There is a door and windows there. The windows do not open. The door will likely be closed 100% of the time, as there's access from the courtyard. And then the courtyard, you see in the middle, it's partially covered. There's 2 really neat redwood trees in the middle there. And then the front room is, go to the next one, Tyler, the recreation space. So it's 1,330 square feet that will be packed with all the games and the redemption area. We have games along the perimeter as well as in the center, ticket redemption and token games in the front. And the next one, I think, shows that that's the corner closest to the plaza, the southwest corner, where those windows are. That's where the prize redemption booth will be. And there's a photo of the courtyard. It will be fenced, this courtyard, so there won't be access in and out of here for safety, especially because the driveway is right there. We don't want kids running out. And so all entry will be from the front, and there'll be an emergency exit gate on the fence from the courtyard. Bathrooms are also located off that courtyard. And this is the rear. As you can see, those are the doors. On the far right, it's just a storage closet, and then the emergency exit is the closest thing to any neighbors. And it's just a picture of some of our little testers enjoying the arcade and hoping we can get it open.
Does anybody have questions for the applicant? Mike? Get John next.
I had some questions regarding the parking lot space. I don't know whether we talk about that now.
Well, if it's a question for the applicant, you can talk about it now. If you have a question for staff, that can be at any time.
Okay. Well, let me just start, because when I visited this location, I noticed that a lot of what the design guidelines were given for the downtown area, this doesn't comply a lot, because the rosemary that's along that side isn't enough to shield and you can see it here in the bike, is right there. It's not enough to shield cars. And also I noticed that there's no bike parking in this area at all. And I don't know what you intended to do.
We're definitely going to work with staff to install bike racks. That's a big priority, as well as I think you mentioned skateboard area, safe place to put their skateboards. So ideally somewhere near the parking area there will be abundance of bike racks if we can get those situated.
And is there a guideline for, and this is probably for David, is there a guideline for how many bike racks, or, I know we've got guidelines for parking for people, and there's only 3 staff here. I don't know how many parking spaces are supposed to be allocated. And then also, I noticed that along that back fence on the right, which you can just barely see on the right-hand corner, there's no vegetation at all, which on the other side of it, there's wonderful plants growing. It's a wonderful, looks like a really nice, lush environment. I don't know if you've thought about making that more.
Yeah, the issue is that there's no planting strip there, and if we put planter boxes, it would impede parking. But what we're hoping to do, because fortunately we're also operating next door, is train. We already have lush vegetation all the way to the top. Train it to come over on that side.
And then my other comment was about the building surroundings. As you can see, this is a very boxy building, and it's the Berkeley sedge grass is very. I looked that up, and it's not very high, but it seems like that this area, if you're trying to attract a more family environment, that the vegetation around the building would be more lush, and whether it's flowers or something. But I just noticed that most of the area is in Tambark, and I don't know what the current watering.
Yeah, we haven't had a chance to kind of experiment with how the irrigation is there. The Berkeley sedge grass is what we have planted in front of Bumble, and it does get pretty abundant.
Okay.
But I think we were keeping the plans simple just because those planting strips do seem pretty barren. But I think we were going to work with staff to try to get something that will grow up the building and add to the allure a little bit. We agree the building could use a little love, so we're going to do our best.
And then the last thing I noticed is that the signage that's for this building, in the guidelines it says that it's no more than 12 inches, and yet in the plans it's 16 inches for the lettering, and it looks like 20 inches for the insignia, that man. And I don't know I guess it's a question for staff of how much it's a guideline, so how much variance do we allow? Do we have to talk about that? And
It is a guideline, and on the elevations, the letters, area and numbers 151, are set at 12 inches, and then the alien goes up to a little over a foot and a half. And I think the detail that I think you're referring to on page A3.1
right.
shows a typical letter height at 16 inches.
Right.
And so I think that's a discrepancy. We were going with the elevation in terms of what the intention was, and
Okay.
and that would meet our guidelines. I think we would agree with you that if the letters were at 16 inches, that would not meet our guidelines.
Yeah.
Yes, we were looking at total area when we designed the logo, so if the alien needs to be reduced, we have no problem with that.
Is that it for you, Mike?
Can we get is this a color board for the exterior? Can
Yeah.
we get it? Thank
Can
you.
we bring it up here?
And while you're looking at that, You had some questions, John, also?
So I'm interested to know how you're going to be handling parking. You have coveted parking spots, which is a bit of a rarity in town. Are those going to be just for the arcade? Are you going to put a time limit? What's the signage going to read on those parking spaces, if anything?
I believe we'll probably have signage that the parking is for use of Area 151. We'll probably have employees park there as well. I don't think we'll, strictly enforce any timelines or towing, but if it got to be a problem where it was full of people who weren't patronizing, then we'd probably evaluate that.
Okay. And are you going to require your employees to park there, or just encourage them?
Probably require them to park there.
Okay.
Where we encourage biking mostly. A lot of our employees
Okay.
are local anyway. At Bumble, we have more employees.
And part of the reason for asking, obviously, is there's a parking at times can be a premium in downtown, and it sounds like if that were a condition of the use permit, that would be acceptable. Would that be? Am I putting words in your mouth?
Yes, no, of course. We would have no problem requiring employees park in our parking lot over taking up plaza spots.
Okay. And the hours of operation, you're opening at 10 in the morning. Will that create any kinds of problems in terms of kids who should be in school, or I know, as an example, the high school crowd very often will go downtown for lunch. Your job is not to be truant officers, but I'm just wondering what your expectations are relative to who will be there at 10 in the morning and sort of how that'll play out.
Yeah, it's we run very kind of small town operations where we have a limited staff who work a lot of hours, who get to know everyone who's there. So if that were a problem, I'm sure we would take steps to address it. The reason for opening that early is that it does attract, as you could see, the younger set too. So the moms with preschoolers that are getting out or only go to school 3 days a week, we do have games that appeal to them too. So it'll probably be a younger crowd in the morning, and if we had problems with teenagers who's obviously they should be in school, I'm sure we can find ways to address that.
And this may not apply for those rambunctious 6 and 7-year-olds, but if there are events or parties, do you anticipate, particularly if the parties go late, and I'm talking about 10 o'clock, do you anticipate having somebody in charge of security, or how do you patrolling or checking on kids who are maybe causing issues in the parking lot? What's your thought on that?
The events that we anticipate having are more like family events where you'd have, adults there with children, not kind of like a social hour of strictly teenagers. So I think that should police itself. But again, I'm very aware of issues like that. And if they came up, we would address them.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Jim, Jerry?
I had one question. Can you go back to the map diagram? What would be the access from someone who's actually having a coffee at Bumble, checking on their kid who's a teenager in Area 451?
So the sidewalk in front of Bumble and Area 151, the front gate for Bumble and the front door for Area 151 are probably 15, 20 feet away from each other. So you come out of the front door and the front gate of Bumble and enter into the arcade.
Okay.
Other questions from commissioners? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have several requests to speak. The first one is Ed Grady, followed by Frank and Lynn Wagner.
Thank you. My name's Ed Grady. I actually live at 51 West Edith, but we own a property and a unit within 124 2nd Street. The concern that the residents have is based on the operation at Bumble and a continuing growth of that kind of operation. We've had a very significant increase in the noise levels and complaints from owners and renters at 124 2nd Street since Bumble has opened. You may know from the operation at Bumble that the back area has been turned into a play area. And so when patrons come into Bumble, they send their kids out to the back, and the kids are out there kind of unsupervised. And it's really been a very, very significant change in the neighborhood. And, you know, the concern that was approved by the commission, and then that we would expand that to this operation is a significant issue for us. So part of the concern is, has there been any noise studies done by the city or by the organizations to see what the change in noise conditions were from prior to Bumble to now, and then what will the additional traffic do? There's no question that a change in use from a health food store to a operation that's going to have many, many people coming in and out at multiple hours is an issue. So beyond noise, the second point is that we're concerned about the hours of operation. People are living in these units, they're having dinner in the evening, and all of a sudden now we've got another operation that's going to be out there until 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock with traffic and people moving around. So I think all of the residents in 124 2nd Street and the abutting properties understand that we bought property next door to a commercial zone. So that's not a fundamental issue. We understand there's noise from Safeway, there's noise from downtown, but we do believe that when we bought there was a certain set of conditions, and that has now significantly changed because of the change in the use. So we would ask the Commission to consider in this use permit a reduction in the hours, the closing hours, and potentially some control over how noise is going to be abated, screening and control mechanisms, so that we don't have a continued degradation of property values of the homeowners.
I have a comment, if you don't
Yes.
mind. We're not here to discuss Bumble, because that's past tense, but it seems to me that staff has considered the noise issue because the noise screening now will have the entire parking lot, and if you noticed in the slides, that will have the back part of the building is all office, and so the recreation area, which is where the noise will be, is really on the street level, not towards the back. And I'm sure that staff considered the neighbors when they came to that conclusion.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you, Mr. Grady.
Okay.
Frank and Lynn Wagner, or one or the both?
So I also live at 124 2nd Street, about 10 feet from the back of Bumble, which I've not commented upon, but also about 10 feet across the back of the parking lot. And so my concern is the noise and the proximity, of course, and it's fourfold. So one, we addressed and discussed the back of the building being closed. However, the courtyard, which is between the office building and the main building that will include the arcade games, their statement there about how there will be noise because that will be a sitting area, and we imagine that the door will be open continuously, so we'll be able to actually hear the arcade games, and that's probably just another 20 feet or 25 feet past the back of the building. So we are concerned about noise from that aspect.
You're talking about the space that's pinned between the two buildings, is that right?
Correct. Yes, it's open air. It's open toward one way and open into the ceiling. And of course, there will be a door that will be open into the courtyard, which I imagine will be open quite frequently. Okay. So there will be noise from that. Second, there was no specific address in the materials that I saw about the noise of the arcade games themselves, in addition to the noise. So I don't know. There's nothing in that addressed or a review of how loud those games would be. I'd imagine they have volume controls that would need to be looked at or set at a certain level, like a maximum decibel, which wasn't mentioned. Third thing is Special events, there's that waiver to actually have special events and open until 10, and there's no control or specific mention about the frequency of that. We would prefer, as residents, of course, never to have it at 0, but certainly if it was permitted to have special events at 10 p.m., that it would be reasonable to ask for some limit on what that would be, like once a quarter or something like that. And of course, finally, as testified earlier, that there would be an encouragement of folks to bring bikes and skateboards, and given the fact that we would expect those folks not to be on the First Street side of things, but actually toward the parking lot side or in our alley, which would be directly behind our unit. And of course, that we would be out there. We often have dinner on our patio at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m., so we'd be concerned about the noise from that as well as the operation till 8 p.m.
Thank you. Next to speak will be Kathy Manchuk, followed by Noel Libuit.
I'm just going to read mine because I get nervous speaking. Okay, my name's Kathy Manchuk, and I lived at 130 Second Street, which is right adjacent to the parking lot out there, and some of our units are right off the old Peggy's Health Food parking lot. And we're pretty much opposed to the application, the permit application as it stands. And we moved to the place 10 years ago, and we moved there with the understanding that we are living downtown, and we have the occasional sirens, trucks, noise. We live off the parking lot. We don't have any problem with that. It's basically, fine. However, when I read this use application over, some of the things really kind of stood out to me, and one of the phrases was, it seems like an ongoing, all day into evening, great parties, and I'm quoting, unquote, a great party spot for teen events and adult fun parties. And that's not what we had in mind, nor our neighbors either, as downtown living. And also another concern is the hours are fine for us, 10 to 8, but this special use, unlimited special use, open-ended special use doesn't. It could be abused, and we're worried about that. And then also the noise. The noise issues are the cars and stuff, but I'm an ex-junior high teacher, and I'm concerned about supervision of some of the patrons that might be patronizing the place in the parking lot after they're done. And that it's an odd age group, and they can be a little hard to handle, and they do have to be handled and supervised. So we're concerned about that. And I don't think a signage is going to do the job, requesting people to be quiet and turn down their radios. I think something more will have to be done. I'm not sure what. I'd say security would be one thing, and they've got to make sure the kids aren't loitering in the parking lot out the back, which they like to do. So I would like to see. I don't want to see this proposal put through as it's written. I think it needs to tend to the parking lot noise a little bit more, and to the special use issue also. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Noel Libuit, followed by Maddie McBurney.
Hi, I'm Noel Libuit. I live in 124, the building right behind the businesses. I don't usually come to this. Incidentally, this is my first time to come here, but I was very concerned about what's going on in my neighborhood. I hate to mention it again. Bumble was the impetus for me to come here because of my experience with that business, namely the noise and initially the garbage pollution. Anyways, going back to the new business, my major concern is a lot of the people have mentioned is the noise element. And the second element would be, maybe this is in anticipation of safety. The building is surrounded by almost 100% concrete, which is conducive to skateboarding, roller skating, and for kids to run around. And when the businesswoman said that she's going to put bike racks along one of the major streets, which is First Street, and along the driveway of a parking lot, I think that could be a safety issue right next to the parking lot when there's a lot of cars coming in and out. And also there's an alley between the business and the units. That's an alley where garbage trucks come in and out, and all sorts of gardener trucks. There's a safety issue. And when the businesswoman said that there's a big parking lot between the apartments and the business, it's not a big parking lot. The parking lot only could park about 6 or 9 cars. I don't think that's a big parking lot. And there's really no barrier between the building and the apartment buildings. And so those are my major concerns: the noise, the safety. And I also noticed that one of the problems with Bumble is that they have a carousel in the back, and that generates the noise. And I did notice that there is a carousel in that courtyard right now, and they had put a fence on it around that courtyard, which is about waist level. And any kid could climb over that fence. It's not child-proof, although the pickets are really narrow, or the spaces. But the height of it is almost waist high, and any toddler could climb over that and get on the street, and it's a safety hazard.
Thank you very much. Maddie McBurney, followed, nope, that's the last one.
Hi, I'm Maddie McBurney. I live at 149 Dowd Drive, and our property is really close to Almond School, which has a lot of noise and a lot of people playing there. And I just want to say that our community has a lot of children, and I'm really in support of this use, even if it's a pilot program of some sort. I think that our downtown needs more vibrancy, and I think this will bring families down there, and merchants will be so happy that there's more people down there. And I'm also here to speak to the property owners, managers, about public art, that I think that if this happens, that the building could be much more beautiful with either murals, or the parking lot could even have street graphics. It could be a really attractive building. I hear what the neighbors are saying, but I feel like the building has been dead for a really long time. And I think this could bring like a beautiful piece to First Street. And anyway, I'm in support of it because I think that we need the activity and we need the action down there. And I don't think it'll be really loud because it's going to be indoors mostly. Okay.
Thank you.
That's it.
That concludes the papers that I have. Why do I not have yours? Just a minute. Forgive me. Joyce Iwasaki. I'm so sorry.
Hi, I live in 124, and the alley is between our building and the businesses. And my main concern is safety in the alley and in the driveway. I'm concerned because as I noticed with Bumble, we have a lot more traffic, a lot more foot traffic. And when I go out of the driveway onto First Street, I have to be very, very careful because there's more people on the sidewalk.
Could you address the commissioners?
So I am concerned about more foot traffic along that sidewalk, and if there's any consideration of improving that. One thing is that first parking space in that driveway, if there is a tall SUV or a pickup, and I have a small car, I really can't see the people as well as I want to. So even eliminating that first parking space might help. But I am concerned, and I really go really slowly because I don't want to, bother the pedestrians. So my concern is safety in the driveway and in the alleyway.
Thank you. And now I will close the public hearing because that is the last person who requested to speak.
So can we ask staff some questions or the applicants some further
Yes,
questions?
I was actually going to ask the applicant if they would like to make a reply.
I would love to.
Thank you.
I appreciate everyone's comments, and I just want to note that we try to be very respectful of our neighbors. We know that we are a commercial district that bats right up to residential. I've only spoke to one person since we opened Bumble that voiced a complaint. I've never heard any of these before. As a business owner, I know we're not here to talk about Bumble, so I'm going to focus on 151, but as a business owner, I run a very clean property. Our trash is in the trash enclosure. We follow the rules. I think that the big picture here is the vibrancy of downtown, and that First Street corridor has been pretty sleepy for a while. So I think people got used to the fact that, 145 was an antique store, and there was one person coming and going every day in the back parking lot, and that's it. Restaurant use is a lot more vibrant, and there's going to be trash trucks coming to pick up garbage once a week, but nothing out of the ordinary. Also, 127 used to be a full restaurant and bar that backed up to that same alley that was open until midnight with an outdoor area, very loud parties, serving alcohol until all hours of the night, events whenever they wanted to do them, and that was an approved use. So First Street is open to a lot of different businesses. I don't think that our use will be any will create any other problems that haven't happened in the past or part of what use permits that go with what's already approved for First Street. In terms of foot traffic, I agree that that area along First Street can be a little dangerous for walking, but the whole idea is to get foot traffic downtown. And I think when the city does the improvements to First Street, when it comes there, that will help a lot if the sidewalks are widened a little bit. And in terms of supervising this age group, I've dealt with the general public a lot. I know the issues, and I know how to deal with them. We won't let things get out of hand. I really am against having any kind of security because I really want this to feel like it's a small town, and I want the people who we have working behind the counter to know everyone's names. And if the child's mom wants to call the seventh graders, call Area 151 and say, hey, can you tell Johnny to ride his bike home for dinner? They know who Johnny is, and they're gonna, if there's a problem they can go and call his mom. So we really want this to feel like a community, and in turn with that, we really do want to respect our neighbors. So I'm sorry if the recent noise has been an issue, but we'll do our best to be respectful and keep things under control. And I know, Bumble does back right up to the parking lot. This has a lot of shelter. It is 10 parking spots, and it's actually more parking than building on the lot size. So we'll do our best.
Could you wait just a minute?
Yeah.
I think one of the commissioners has a question for you.
Okay. So there are arcades and arcades, and I've been in arcades where I couldn't hear myself think because of ambient noise or music, and every arcade game was making noise that was very loud. And so what I'm trying to understand is, we're talking an arcade, but I'm trying to understand what the level of noise will be. Are you playing loud music inside? Are all these games making very loud noise? Can you give me set some expectations in terms of noise level?
Yeah, definitely. The arcade games do have volume control on them. I would be hesitant to try to say that we would need to follow regulations with how we set those volume controls, because that's arbitrary. And as a customer, I want my customers' experience to be nice when they walk in. I don't want them to have to put on headphones or not be able to hear themselves talk. So the arcade games do make noise. They encourage you to play. They pop up a win-win if you ding-ding if you get the grand prize. But and we will have music playing to kind of create a nice atmosphere. But if it's comfortable inside, I don't imagine that it will be uncomfortable to go through the courtyard, which is partially covered. Where the door is, it's covered by concrete and stucco, and it's only open where the redwood trees are. So there will be noise inside, but I can't imagine that it would be loud enough in there to be bearable to be in there for it to travel all the way to the neighbors.
I have a question.
Of course.
I was looking at the plans. Are there any, are you planning to change the windows which are in the existing building? Right now, it doesn't look like there's any change.
Yeah, the
I think it's probably better if I'm Taylor Robinson with Pastoral Investment Company, and we actually own the building. And in working with Mary to have her be our tenant, we're not really planning to do a lot of major improvements to this building because we do have longer-term plans for the site. So
the reason I asked the question is this looks like these are single-pane windows.
I think they are. Yeah, they look like they're single pane. They're just single pane, like old
The only reason
storefront
I'm asking
windows.
the question is that if noise level being a concern, would there be something that you guys would be willing to look into if it became an option? Because if
Certainly.
you do have double pane windows or something, at least we can control
There are
the
definitely
noise.
windows, as you know, with higher STC ratings and single pane glass. So if it were to become a problem, I'm sure that we could
We can look into
the windows.
Yeah, we're
Just
open
wanted to
see
ask.
if there's
All right.
a problem.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you very much. Do you have anybody have questions for staff?
My question is about the conditions, that item 2, which is the permitted hours of business from 10 to 8. The second sentence says, for special events and outlined in the project description, a business shall not be open past 10. Is it a reasonable thing to request that on non-school nights, that would be for special events past 10, to try to help mitigate some of having kids later than 10 on a school night?
We could limit those special events, and it's, I think given the concern, it's good to be specific about it, and that would be one way. Other ways could be to limit a certain number per month or something like that.
Yeah, I was going
The
to.
city attorney has a comment.
Well, go ahead, finish.
Oh, and I was just going to say that, we might ask the operator if they have any ideas, given the concern, and how they might frame that.
Yeah, I was going to say, hearing the concerns, it's very customary to limit special events, how many special events, and you could do how many per week, how many per month, per quarter, something like that. And then school nights, if it would mean in the summer, they could, so there would be more, and if that's your intent, but, or you could say, Monday through Thursday or something like that special events don't go past 10 or something like that. But, and then I had some other suggestions.
Before you
on
went
some-
by this, you're looking for a specificity.
Yes,
If there was a
because-
limit, it would have to be specific.
Right now, it would be hard to control how many special events they have and how many is too many. And so if you want to limit it, you can. That's all I'm saying. But if it will be easier to enforce if you have a set number. And
So can I ask a follow-on question to Jolie on that, which is when we had the farmers market and Rancho, there was some concerns raised, and as a result of that, we agreed that we would review the conditional use. I believe it was a conditional use permit in September. So we basically gave it a summer.
I remember that.
And actually, at the end of it, actually none of the neighbors had a problem, but they decided it wasn't make sense as a business. So it was an opportunity to revisit it. Is that something that we can do, that we would typically do in these kinds of situations?
That's a pretty standard condition, too, with the new use, and you're not sure how it's really going to fit in. And, a 6-month review or a review, come back into the Planning Commission or the PTAC now in a year, or a lot of times you draft it that unless there's concerns, it doesn't come back. Or, James, that's sometimes how they do them too, is unless you, or there's just a report from staff in a year. We've reviewed it, we have had 0 complaints, and you just report back. And then
Right.
if there are concerns, then you bring, you do have it for a review.
Right, and the difference here is, in the case of the farmer's market, you could discontinue the farmer's market at any time, and there was no investment in terms of operations. In this case, it's different because basically somebody is building a business and investing significantly, and so the way I would look at it would be I would think it would be more fairer if it were a review. It would be not to no-go, but do you need to make changes in terms of hours or putting in making the windows that are more soundproof or things like that. So again, I'm just trying to understand what the range of options were if people thought, the commissioners felt there was an issue here.
You can always bring it back for a review in a year, and it doesn't mean, or 6 months or something like that. It doesn't mean it's going to be revoked. And once this is granted, the ability to the city to revoke it will be the city's burden, and you'll have to show that it really is being a nuisance activity. Because once this use permit's granted, it's vested, and they do have property rights at that time.
But at that point, the review could be to review hours of operation or number of special events or noise abatement.
Yeah, and once a use permit comes back for review, all the conditions are open for review, so.
One thing I would, we can do all of these things, but what I would temper this with a little bit is this is a fairly innocuous business. It's an indoor activity. The types of special event restrictions that we're talking about, I mean, those are typically for things like concert venues, bars that have performing events, things that really generate a lot of noise and potential impacts on, or, farmers markets, because you have the whole, where are the people going to be parking? Are they going to be parking in neighborhoods kind of a thing? But, this business activity really doesn't rise to that level. So if there is a concern that this business activity could, generate noise or problems, I would say rather than trying to micro-regulate how many events they have and how many people are at those events and that kind of thing, maybe it does just come back in 6 or 12 months and we evaluate whether, the windows are adequate to suppress noise, whether events are, becoming unruly, versus trying to dictate tonight how many, how they conduct their business.
Okay. Other questions for staff?
I have another question, and that's
Please.
item 5 on the conditions, which talks about the signage, and it says to avoid loud music, loud voices. I was curious, is there a decimal level that the city has in place that, so that the police officers, because anybody can say what's loud, right, and it varies. And I was wondering if it would make more sense to say a quiet zone of some sort in that back area, rather than saying no, avoid loud music, because that's what people will think about, loud. So
There is a noise decibel a regulation that can be measured. My expectation is that this activity will not rise to that level, but by reviewing the use permit in 6 months or 12 months, the ambient noise is going to be so quiet there in the evening that just conversation might be, bothersome to people. So I think we can control that better through the use permit process than our noise regulations.
Actually, the noise level is pretty high. Think of it in terms of leaf blowers, and that's not the kind of continuous noise that I think the neighbors are talking about. I think James has put his point to it, which is in a neighborhood where people are eating quietly dinner, if someone comes out and is talking in the parking lot, you will hear them. It's the contrast. But you also had a question, John?
I had a question for staff. I'm just trying to understand, obviously we're comparing a little bit of apples and oranges because we have residential and we have commercial backing up to the residential. But when we think about in residential, we typically think of 25-foot rear setbacks is our standard. And looking at this property, what's the setback between the back part of the property and the back of the building and the rear property line, and then what's the setback between the adjacent the behind neighbors and their property line and the building? Obviously, we also have an alleyway which somehow should be like the baby being split and to count it, but I just seem, in having looked at it, it looked to me that it was at least 25 feet, particularly if you go to the center point of the alleyway. And then, but I couldn't determine what the setback was to the back of the one or two buildings in question
Are you
on
asking
Second
setback,
Street.
or asking actual distance between this property and the next property?
Either or.
Okay.
There's no setback required here for the building, but the building is set back about 60 feet from the rear property line.
Okay, so it's 60, compared to, as an example, if you had rear neighbors, and I know it's different, but
There's a 16-foot alley.
60 feet, and then a 16-foot alley, and then what's the distance?
It's about 98 feet
So it's
from one
100
building to the other.
So it's 100 feet. Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. In that sense, I think we have enough information. Jim, would you care to start the discussion?
Sure. Yeah. So here's what I believe. I think that I'm actually quite excited about this project. I mean, I've heard a lot of feedback, especially from the teenage population in Los Altos in particular, that the town of Los Altos, especially in the downtown area, is just not an area where you would find any entertainment, you'd see any reason to gather there. And the feedback that I've actually always heard repeatedly is that teenagers would actually go to other towns, like Palo Alto, to Mountain View, to other towns to actually seek their entertainment at night. So when I see projects like Area 451, I'm actually very excited about the potential, because I think it actually adds, again, a lot of really nice local gathering space, and hopefully in a safe environment where kids can actually stay local when they actually are looking for their entertainment, whether they're actually looking to gather and basically have fun. And the fact that they're actually staying local in downtown Los Altos, I think, is actually usually a very good thing. Now, keep in mind, I've heard a lot of the neighbors talk about the noise restrictions, and I am quite sympathetic to that. I mean, obviously, we don't want businesses in downtown where it becomes a noise nuisance, right? Especially to neighborhoods. But at the same time, when you're actually talking about some of the comments from staff as well, I don't think that there is any reasonable risk at this point, especially when you're actually talking about 100 foot between the buildings, that these noise issues will actually be a big issue. Okay, and especially for buildings that actually are kind of abut the downtown commercial area, there actually has to be at least some reasonable expectation that a business can come in that actually has a more vibrant or higher traffic, and those types of things that actually are reasonable as part of a vibrant downtown, which I think that the community as a whole is actually looking for. So I definitely would support Area 451 as a project. The thing, actually, I would suggest that some of the conditions that are put forth by staff for this project are a little too restrictive, okay? Because what I can say is that I would have more concerns if kids were there at 10 o'clock in the morning as opposed to 9 o'clock at night, okay? If you're looking for a vibrant downtown where you have a substantial restaurant community, it would be a very advantageous thing to be able to have a local environment where teenagers can actually hang out among themselves while adults actually have dinner at a downtown restaurant. I think that's actually a very positive mix, a positive use of the space, and it actually adds a lot to the downtown environment as well. So I would actually propose, and I'm not sure if obviously we're way preliminary in terms of votes, to really kind of strike down a lot of the conditions that actually put forth here, including number 2, which is basically the business use issues. At least make it so that it further allows additional times around 8, 9, etc. As well as the sale and consumption of alcoholic beverage. Obviously, we don't want that as an option. But for corporate events, if that's actually something that you guys are actually planning. The consumption of alcoholic beverages in a closed environment within a business should not be an issue. It shouldn't be an issue as long as there is no other effects to kind of the other areas around it. So I don't see that as an issue as well. And the applicant for additional signage in the parking lot asking for customers to avoid loud music, I am unclear why there's an additional restriction here, because the city itself already has requirements for, decibels and what exactly is considered loud music. And I'd rather have that as an operating standard and not something that's specific to this business. I understand that, I understand the noise considerations, and I definitely heard the concerns from a lot of the residents. I mean, the reality is that when we have a new business get introduced, and hopefully it's a successful business, because I think that it actually adds a lot to the vibrancy of downtown, as well as the community, as well as the other aspects around that, that you'll have more traffic, you'll have more people going in and out. And in a downtown environment, I think it's somewhat reasonable to expect it. And it's not a bar, it's not a restaurant use, and so that's probably a much higher concern. But I understand the concerns, but at the same time, I mean, I like the concept of this project. I like the fact that it's a gathering space for teenagers that are local, and I also like the fact that it's kind of a more neighborhood feel type of business. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Malkuk, I'm going to switch and let you do yours too.
I actually agree with you in most of those things. I have little girls. They are 6 and 8. I wish we had more stuff downtown that the kids could do. And I have nieces and nephews moving in with me who are going to be in the high school. And the biggest issues we've been discussing as a family is that if these kids want to do something, they have to go to Mountain View or Palo Alto. And honestly, if kids are in an environment where most of the neighbors are hanging out or the parents' friends are hanging out, there is less disruption versus if they're going to a city where they don't know anybody, the parents are not going to be there. It's difficult, and I think we've been lacking that downtown. We have been concentrating on revitalizing it. We've been concentrating on restaurants, commercial space, but a big chunk of our city are the youngsters, and it'll be great to try and keep them in the city. And I think it's a brilliant idea. I would like to not restrict the numbers of how many they can do the special occasions. There could be a birthday party. I know if my daughter's birthday party is on Tuesday, she wants to celebrate it on Tuesday. So if they want to do that, I think it's worth giving them a test run, as we had done for the other project, and then we revisit it if there is an issue. But I think it will be unfair for us as a community and as the business owner for not giving them the opportunity to at least try it and then see how it goes, and then we can always revisit. And the hours, I'm not saying the business, but the hours and the special occasions. Alcohol, I think where the kids are concerned, it's a good thing that it wasn't there. If it's something that the entire team up here thinks that is something it should be introduced, I would really recommend that it comes down to where it's corporate events, which is cooperations only, and is brought from outside rather than them supplying it. But I think keeping it as a very clean, kid-friendly operation, the way they've been targeting, that is what we should be focusing on. And what they've submitted and what they have in mind, they're very nice kids-friendly games. Those are not the games where you don't want your kids to be sitting in front of the computer and just playing endlessly and not learning anything. So, and it's similar to the ice cream shop, which opened close to Egan and Santa Rita. Kids go and hang out there, and I love looking at it. My kids are not allowed to eat ice cream, but we go there and check it out. And they had the yogurt ice cream, and it's fun because all those kids are hanging out, and it's really nice to see that we still have a place where everybody can gather. And I can totally relate to what the neighbors are saying. I mean, we bought our house right across from Egan, and when we bought it, there was no police charter, and it has grown. But honestly, till this day, I enjoy looking at the kids do what they're doing. I wish we had more of a park, but when we bought the property, we knew that that property was up to expand however anybody wanted to. But I think it's important for us to keep the youth in downtown a little bit more interested in us and the downtown for our future. So I personally like the project.
Jerry?
Well, as usual, I look at everything from the reason why I'm on this board is I really wanted to see what I could bring from a commercial real estate guy towards bringing vitality and diversity to downtown. And I see this as a key part to that. I think it'll affect the entire area. So, as an example, the condos that will eventually be built across the street. I think uses like Bumbo and Area 151 will encourage even a more diverse group of people to buy those condos because of what's across the street now. I think before you had these kinds of uses, you would have had more empty nesters, people that are trying to downsize, looking at buying condos. But if you have these kinds of uses that someone can just walk across the street with their kids, it'll encourage them. We manage probably 25 apartment complexes. The most, by far, popular apartment complex that we own is one that we have our internal daycare center. People come to live in the community just because of the daycare center. And look at this as the Bumbo and Area 151 as daycare centers for our youth. This will only encourage diversity downtown and also, in my opinion, increase property values. Not decrease it, increase it. I don't know how many people Mary gave me a YouTube, where there was, you ought to see the young lad that originally came up with cardboard and tape. Did you see that?
It was awesome.
It brought a tear to your eye. This kid sat in his garage at his dad's business and with cardboard and tape made these games where the feedback would be getting tickets if you accomplish certain goals. Sat there for weeks and months, not getting anywhere until finally someone in the community took a hold, and the next thing you know, this kid couldn't drive the people away with a bat. And I'm thinking that the same thing is going to happen here. So I'm thinking that this kind of diversity is exactly what we need downtown. So
Let
I'm
me
all
interrupt
for
for
it.
just a minute. Did you want to disclose that you had an ex parte discussion with the applicant at some point?
I met with the applicant to talk about this.
Good. It's very important when you do that, you disclose that when you start. Good.
Okay, I just did. Yeah.
Good. Thank you. For the record.
For the record.
Please go ahead.
Okay. I don't think I'm going to repeat. I think that the staff has identified all the potential issues, and I think they've mitigated them with their conditions. And I see with the parking lot in the office, 100 feet between where the noise is and where buildings are is a great deal more than what you have in your backyard in your house for when your neighbors have parties. A great deal more. So I don't see that as being a property. I'm all for this.
Okay. And you would not make any changes to the conditions?
I wouldn't make any changes to conditions.
Mike?
I really like this project as well. I have a teenage son, and there's no place that, I mean, they wander the streets of downtown just trying to look for a place to hang out and to have at least a location. And my thought was with Safeway coming in and eventually in a year or two, it's an opportunity for kids to hang out while their parents go shopping and pick them up on the way back. So I like the location of this. My concern is about the beautification of the building and making a very comfortable village-type structure. It's not that way that I can foresee. And I look at the guidelines that were for the downtown area and First Street, and it doesn't meet that. I don't know. It's not really called out here, and I don't know. We're not building the building from scratch, but it would be nice that there's some beautification or some things that are put in play. I was really surprised to see the picture because the rosemary that I see in the picture is a lot different than the rosemary that's right there now. So I don't know whether the watering system got turned off, and because it's basically drying up really quickly. But I get back to that point of it needs to be a lot more attractive and a lot more inviting to the downtown characteristics that we have than what's currently on the plans that I see. As far as the hours and the noise, I think that it's a good idea to have it come back after a while so we can review it if there are any issues that people can speak to it and we can at least hear what some of the other concerns are at that time.
Thank you. John?
Okay, so ex parte discussions, I met with the applicant, but there was nothing that the applicant conveyed to me that was any different than what was presented here this evening. Like many of my fellow commissioners, I am looking forward to finding ways to increase the vibrancy of our downtown. And I think this project clearly does it and addresses a part of our population that on movie nights comes to movie nights but doesn't watch the movies. They try and find a place that they can call their own. And sometimes it's Walgreens and sometimes it's somewhere on 2nd Street. I, too, have teenage kids, and while they don't mind running into their parents, they would rather hang out with their friends. And I think finding good, safe places for our kids, they're an important part of the community, and it's not that their rights trump anybody else's rights, but I think we need to find good ways to balance they're part of our community, and they're important. And I will tell you, they spend a lot more time and a lot more money in downtown than a lot of other people, my wife and myself included. And so from an economic viability and vitality, I think we can't simply relegate them necessarily to wandering the aisles of Walgreens, although I have nothing against Walgreens. But I will tell you from my own experience, and it's limited to my kids and their friends, these are our kids. They're good kids. And it's not to say you don't sometimes have problems, and you could say that of any venue, restaurant, bar, and they can be 8 years old or 80. And we put expectations on people who are running businesses that they are going to manage their businesses in a professional way and be responsible to our community. I am not in favor of changing the conditions as presented by staff. I did not hear any objections for the applicant. I am sensitive to the fact that the conditional use runs with the property, and I think given that the applicant is happy with the conditions, or I actually haven't heard any objections to it, I wouldn't want to change those more lenient at this point. If my fellow commissioners felt that somehow providing a review 6 months down the road made sense, or a year down the road, or simply base that on if there were complaints, I certainly am not interested in creating a nuisance for the community. I don't think the applicant is interested in creating nuisance to the community, and I would view that review not one where we would pull that conditional use, but simply look and find further ways to mitigate. But that would be my approach.
If necessary.
If necessary. Again, I don't know. I would look to Jolie in terms of how we might do it, because I am sensitive to the fact that this is a business. People are investing dollars in a business, and I'm not interested in pulling the rug out of somebody because one kid had a bad mouth, on a Saturday night. I mean, that'll happen regardless of whether there's any activity in that building, and at times it may be difficult to separate, whether it's somebody who just didn't like they got carded at Safeway, or whether they're unhappy because they didn't win at the arcade. So,
Well, before I tell you what I'm thinking, let me tell you what I heard you guys say, so you can check me out, which is, I think I heard a more or less general consensus that it would be an idea to have a staff report after 6 or 12 months, which would be a review of any complaints that came in, where if there were complaints, it could be brought back to the commission for mitigation. I think I heard that. I heard in particular a concern about this particular building, in that the application didn't really show enough compliance with downtown guidelines for making it a more attractive building, and so that's something that we can think about. I heard that. I really heard a consensus that the town really needs a place for kids, and that this is a good one. So in terms of its location, I also heard almost everybody say that it's hard when the residents are used to having very quiet uses, and it is adjacent to a commercial zone, and it's going to change, and change is going to be really tough. And we ran into this with the large projects on El Camino, which backed into Rambus Building and the hotel, which backed into major residential areas, where there was an expectation after 20 years of nothing going on that it would stay that way, and that was very hard for neighbors. I'd like to bring up something about the sweet shop, because the sweet shop is really a good example of a use that enhances our town and just the kind of thing we're talking about. But I've lived here a long time, and previous owners in that site were abusive. And it was only when the sweet shop came in with a positive attitude that it became an asset to the community instead of a nuisance, because there was a point where people were running drugs out of there, the police were there every night, the neighbors were horrified, it was just terrible. And so I think it's very important that Jolie pointed out that if there's a conditional use permit, it runs with the property. And if the owner should change, or if the use of the actual applicant, a different kind of business came in, that might be a problem. So here's what I'm thinking. I agree that First Street is being redeveloped in a big way. And we're going to see Safeway, going to see the post office block. We're going to see a lot of activities. There's going to be a lot of change. And that's going to affect the residents who are in this very internal urban area in town. And so you will have to put up with the change, because it's coming and there's no way we can stop it. On the other hand, I do believe that staff has been very thoughtful in the setting of the hours, in that 10 o'clock is late. I like to go to bed really early, guys, but if most of the time it's 8 o'clock and the occasional events, and I think I would be comfortable setting a limit to occasional events, not by the days of the week, being sensitive to what you said, Malka, but if we set a certain number per quarter or whatever, so if you didn't get your reservation for your birthday party early, too bad. That's going to be better for the business owner, because people will get there sooner. But if there was a limited number, I think at 8 o'clock at night when things shut down, it is important that the signage, I think, be positive and not say, don't do this, but say, this is a quiet zone, respect our neighbors. I also think that the applicant, as a property owner, as a business owner adjacent, I think has been sensitized by the neighbors who've pointed out that noise is a problem now, and I hope that she will not only address it on her current business application, but on her previous business as well, because I think it is an important aspect to bring the vibrancy that I think we will all benefit as a town when First Street becomes, let's say, the new Main Street, where people can sit outside a coffee shop, sit outside a restaurant, and feel like they're in a small town and part of the town. But the downside to this is, if you want to go to sleep before 10 o'clock at night and there's a party going on, you're going to hear little kids yelling. So hopefully they'll be able to keep it in control. So with that said, I have a question, Commissioners, because the alcohol is a problem that is something that I have a problem with, because on the one hand, the presentation said, this is a family-friendly business. This is where people come with their kids. It's where they can drop their kids off, go next door, go to Safeway. To me, that's incompatible with a corporate use where you bring people in and there's alcohol. So to me, either it's a fish or it's a fowl. So for me, I'd say it's a fish, and I don't think there should be alcoholic beverages on the premises. So I'm stating that as my position.
Can I have a comment?
You want to poll us on that? Or?
Well, we can do a straw poll, but
I have a comment.
Jerry has a comment, and so does Jim, and so does Mike. Well, we'll all talk.
Okay, well, and it's a fine line, but, how many times have each of us heard how sleepy a town this is, at nighttime? I mean, my kids are grown, and it's almost a joke about how sleepy downtown Los Altos is to compare it to Mountain View, Los Gatos, or Palo Alto. And so while I respect the fact that we must do what we can to mitigate noise levels downtown, on the other hand, don't we want a little more noise than what we have now? Because what noise means is that there's people downtown, they're doing something, they're spending money, they're enjoying themselves, and the town is more vital. So just like you said, it's inevitable. What we're trying to do here is to bring this town up from its bootstraps and make it a little more vital. You got to have a little noise. So I would be against ruling saying, okay, well, you have to have 3 or 5 or 10 restrictions per quarter. I think we ought to go with, let's see what they do, how it goes. If in 6 months it's too many, we'll be able to determine that. But let them do their own policing and see how it works.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to reiterate Jerry's comment because I've heard so many times that Los Altos is a sleepy town, that nothing's open at 8. And at the same time, from a policy standpoint, it doesn't make sense to restrict businesses from keeping open past 8, right? I mean, those two are completely opposed to each other. And to have these restrictions that's set in stone about the fact that a business has to be closed at 8 should not be a burden on a business owner. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And it's also not in the interest of Los Altos. But to kind of add to that comment, I mean, one of the things that, I've actually looked at these conditions, and basically, I agree with a lot of comments that's stated here from my fellow planning commissioners. But when we're talking about limiting some of these conditions, it basically gives the business a lot more flexibility, okay, to make it more vital, to make it more vibrant in a whole range of ways, including potentially business use. And I have to admit, I mean, sometimes it's fish and sometimes it's foul, but at the same time, for a business, it's a more efficient use of space if there are multiple uses of that space, right? Especially when you're talking about different hours and different types of uses for the space. So, I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit because obviously we haven't even asked the applicant whether they actually would like to entertain, a potential discussion about lifting some of these conditions or not. So I could say that I support it, but it really doesn't matter if the applicant doesn't want it. So maybe we can actually ask them that first before we can actually do this discussion.
But let's just walk down the line here.
Okay. I just have a very quick one. I mean, I'm not going to repeat because I support what was said here. But I think when I have the girls and they become teenagers, I think there should be something on the weekend for them to do after 8 o'clock. And if you don't keep them in our downtown, they're going to go somewhere else. So I would like to see if, of course, again, if it works for the business owner, to maybe on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, we look at long hours. Because we are restricting something at 8 o'clock, whereas people are now, weekends is where they hang out a little later downtown. And now the kids are done, and what do you do? So I think we should be a little bit more flexible because, as the other two commissioners said, we want to make this a vibrant downtown. And we want the teenagers and kids to hang out. I mean, my daughter's recital, we came here at 9 o'clock. This is the first time I said, you know what, we're going to, because we had that big downtown meeting, I was so hyped up. I said, we are going to eat downtown. I honestly drove for 20 minutes, couldn't find anything, which was ready to take any order after that. There was nothing for the kids, and we ended up driving all the way to Mountain View. So I think this will be I personally would like to see it on weekends be longer hours.
Mike?
My comment was about when you were saying we give them 6 months, and then only if there's some issue at hand. I'd like to see that it's more mandatory, because my concern is about actually bike parking and how many kids are there and what does it look like, and none of us know. Like, we don't know if all the kids hang out there or not, and I hate to say you got to have bike racks there, and 2 kids are showing up all the time, and there's 40 bike racks, and that doesn't make sense to me. But on the other hand, there's only 2 spaces for 2 bike parking, and there's ends up to be about 80 to 100 kids every night. We've got to look at some of those issues, and this is new. We've never seen a teenage-centered area like this, and I'm not sure what that looks like.
Okay. John, did you also want to?
Well, I guess my comment is I don't want to micromanage somebody's business. I'm expecting that somebody is there to serve a community and serve a need and figure out how to do that and make money. My interest is in making sure that if there are impacts to the neighborhood that we didn't properly anticipate, that somehow become an undue burden, that we have a mechanism to address those in a constructive way.
So are you saying that you would deal with the hours in some way different than the current condition?
Well, my question is let's ask the applicant whether they want different hours, and if they want alcohol, instead of us trying to figure out what their business plan should be. It's their business.
Mary, would you step up to the microphone, please?
As a business owner, we would absolutely love to have those 2 restrictions removed. I didn't bring them up because I didn't want to push the envelope. I thought they were relatively fair, but I totally agree with all the comments. You know, people do complain it's a sleepy town. You know, my husband and I walk around, we eat dinner late. If we go down at 8:30, there's absolutely nowhere to go. In terms of the alcohol consumption, we will not have an ABC liquor license. So any alcohol consumed there would have to be from a catered event. We would love to be able to have people allowed to consume alcohol on the premises. I am very well aware of the liability that comes with letting people consume or serve alcohol. So that is definitely going to taper down what we allow. We're not going to allow people to come out of Area 151, falling over drunk. It's more that if you're there with kids and you're having a birthday party, you're watching your kid play video games, it'd be really nice to have a beer in your hand. There would be no shots, there'd be no hard alcohol, but we would love to be able to offer beer and wine when we do catered events. Any parties at Area 151 in terms of food would be outside catering, outside beer and wine, so they would bring it in, and we'd have someone serving it who was tips trained and be very respectful of that. But from a business standpoint, it would really help our business model to be able to offer that. I think it would bring in clientele. I have people at Play who ask all the time that decline doing birthday parties at Play because we can't serve alcohol there. So that would be a huge help for us as business owners. The hours, I agree, it's really hard. It would be a hardship to have a number of nights that we can do parties, just because it's hard to judge. In the past at Bumble in March we had 20 events, and then in June we had 2. So it's seasonal. It depends on a lot of different aspects. And when we say special events, it's not like a street fair in the parking lot. It just means that we're going to be in operation a little longer, but nothing's going to, noise level shouldn't be that much higher than in a normal operation. Just because it's a birthday party means that or a special event, we shut down to a small group instead of being open to the public. So we'd very much appreciate having the restriction on hours lifted. And I think it's a good idea, to revisit the conditions in a year. My first priority is to be respectful to this town, to be respectful to you all, and to be respectful to our neighbors. As you know, this would be the 3rd business in a year, and I hope to continue. I have 2 businesses in Menlo Park. I kind of serially like to open these child-based businesses, and I hope to do more in the future. So it's my reputation on the line that I know I'm not going to take these conditions and push the limit or do anything out of the ordinary. I'd like to make it work for everyone so that in the future, if I come with a new idea, my reputation will follow, and hopefully we'll be allowed to continue safe, happy businesses for town of Los Altos.
So what, as opposed to simply unlimited hours, if you had your druthers, what, assuming that there was some restriction on hours, what would those hours of operation be? And if you can differentiate between weekday, weekend, and also between school year and summer.
I think ideally weekdays during the school year, 8 o'clock is reasonable. Weekends and summer days, 10 o'clock is reasonable. Whether we don't really have much business after 8, we just end up closing at 8, or if we've got a lot going on at 8, 8:30, and we want to stay open till 10, it would be nice to have that option.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we ask staff a question?
Well, actually, we can, but if you remember don't forget what it is. Mike?
I just had one comment, just to remind that the police department, in our findings of the discussion, that the police department asked that there be no sale, service, possession of consumption of alcohols on the premises.
Thank you. And a question for staff?
And so the question for staff is, the applicant is proposing different hours, and it would be helpful to get a staff perspective on that, because obviously the staff report was written based on the recommendation that was more restrictive.
I think modifying the hours of operation is perfectly fine. To put this in perspective, if this was a restaurant like the Sports Bar and Grill, they would be going in by right, and we wouldn't have a conditional use permit. We wouldn't be telling them how many banquets they could have, what their hours were, and those activities could be much more imposing on neighbors. So, and the fact that it looks like we're going to be bringing this back in 6 months or 12 months, I think that's the safeguard right there. If we allow them to operate the business the way they feel is best and operate by the hours that they think is best, then we can evaluate that. And I think probably 12 months is better. I think 6 months can actually come up pretty quickly.
How do you feel about alcohol?
That's.
I don't think James has to talk about his drinking habits.
Right.
I think the. I think the police department's concern was that they, actually had an ABC license and were selling. I think the fact that they're bringing alcohol in for special events, I don't see a concern with that.
Can I have a motion from someone?
Phoebe?
Yes.
So I would move, and let me see if I can get this. Let me see if you have the support for this. For condition number 2, in terms of hours, I just don't think we should micromanage the business. So I'm basically saying let's strike that condition and let's let them take care of that. Number 3, let's modify it so that there should be no sale and service of alcoholic beverages, because that's really not in interest either. And then on number 5, we can actually keep it, or what we can do is we can replace it with the provision about the fact that we would see this again from staff report about issues, complaints, especially from neighbors and such, about noise levels or anything like that in 6 to 12 months, depending on what happens.
I'm confused about what you want on 3.
Number 3, I would strike the possession and consumption. Right, so there would be no sale and service of alcoholic beverages on the premise.
Is there a?
Well, I don't know if that's a motion or.
Well, I was actually going to ask if there was support. That was, I believe that Jim was moving
a motion.
And so, can he get a second in its current configuration? Okay, let's try for a modified version. Would you like to try it, or shall I have someone else do it?
Why don't you have somebody else do it?
Okay. Malka, would you
I
like
will
to take a
try
hand?
it.
Okay.
Okay. I'm okay with, okay, let me rephrase it. Number 2, I think striking the entire condition would be a little open-ended. I would like to keep that 10 p.m. limit there. But definitely, so I would say that we permit the hours of operation for the business from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. during weekends.
Did you mean 10 a.m.?
10 a.m.
10 a.m. to 10 p.m. during weekends, and during weekdays, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. And during summers, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. I like the provision of number 3 that there shall be no possession or no sales and service. So basically, possession and consumption should be striked out, that they should be able to get from outside. Number 5, I wouldn't strike the whole thing. I would do the verbiage of rather than avoid loud music is what we've been discussing earlier, where it's a quiet zone, please be sensitive to neighbors. I would like to see that signage there. And then the condition would be that we actually revisit this in 1 year.
Okay.
Revisit it in 1 year to see if additional mitigation is required?
If needed.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, can we get a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, will you accept a modification?
Yes.
I would like to put an additional condition on that the applicant work with the building owner to see what they can do to make it a more attractive site and more in keeping with the downtown guidelines.
I would love
relative to
that.
landscaping and general beauteousness.
Perfect.
Will you accept that one?
Yes.
Can I
Madam
get a
Chair,
s-
maybe the weekend hours are Friday and Saturday versus Saturday and Sunday?
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's
Yes,
a
Friday,
good
and
weekends
clarification.
being Friday, Saturday, yes.
Friday and Saturday.
And one thing you added about the landscaping and the design guidelines, you may want to add something that is that they work with staff. That's a condition about the bike racks.
Thank
Because
you.
I know you wanted bike racks, but if it doesn't make it into the conditions, they don't have to do it.
Okay, so.
Yeah, that was my suggestion. for
Okay, so
Okay.
will you accept
And-
another change on that?
That would be
Mark?
perfect.
And so but I have a question on the bike racks. But the presumption is the bike racks are not to impede the parking for vehicles in that parking lot.
But they'll work with staff. Staff
Right,
won't
okay.
let them do
But
that.
but that's, right, so I just want to make sure we understand that this is not, that we're trying to keep the parking. The other condition that I'd like to put on is that, as the applicant has agreed, I'd like to make a requirement that the employees park in their parking lot.
Okay. So, staff, have you gotten all these various
Changes.
goodies?
Could I,
Because the ones that aren't in some way have to do with the employees parking in the parking lot, not in the
City lot.
city lot, that there be bike racks and improved attractive landscaping per the downtown guidelines, working with staff to achieve that, that there be a review after 12 months for operation being compatible with the neighborhood and per the conditional use. And then the other ones are modifications to the conditions we already
That we have
had,
stated.
which was to strike possession and consumption in number 3, that the permitted hours of operation are from 10 until 10 on weekend, defined as Friday and Saturday and summer, and 10 until 8 in the other times.
You didn't mention anything about the building itself. You mentioned landscaping, but what about the building?
Well, if I was not clear, I meant to say that in keeping with the downtown commercial guidelines, that the applicant shall work with staff to improve the landscaping, put in bike racks, and generally make the building more attractive.
The
And I
facade.
leave that to staff. So have I gotten it all, and have you gotten it all, David?
Yes.
Can I get a clarification on the hours? Like, how does that work? It's 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. on weekdays
Weekdays.
during school hours?
During
school
School days and Sunday.
and
and then-
Sunday.
So Friday and Saturday can stay open later, and in the summer during the weekdays as well.
And there's exclusion for up to 10 p.m. for special events.
The 10 p.m. exclusion is still, for all,
It's
I mean,
still-
10 p.m. is always the limit.
Okay.
It never goes past 10.
That's why we wanted to keep it back in.
And do we have to, not to micromanage it, but if,
Oh, why not?
yeah, but if we got a holiday on Monday, does that mean that they're closed?
No, we're
At
just
8?
talking about summers, right? We're
Well,
talking
summers
about-
will be,
during the
we didn't
school year.
talk about holidays, we talked about
summer.
summers.
And I'm just,
I think that's a little,
Because there'll be a lot of holidays
I
otherwise.
think we could, I think they've gotten a more generous allowance than they ever intended when they put their application in.
Okay, but it's a 12-month review
Yes.
by staff coming back
Yes,
to Planning and Transportation.
Staff
Based
will
on-
bring it back to us based on what they learn over the next 12 months.
Do we need a second on that, or we already done that?
I think we had a
did the
second. What we had were amendments, and let's second any amendment. Someone?
I'll second the
I'll second.
All right. For the motion as described, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries 6-0.
Can't wait. Wish I was a teenager.
Yeah, I was going to say, and my
You
teenage
are,
used to hang out in the Safeway parking lot, so I'm
It's a state
very
of
much
mind, you
looking
see.
forward to Safeway.
Like 8, 9,
Should we get a bio break?
younger kids.
Yes.
My 14-year-old.
There won't be a Safeway parking lot.
While the next applicant prepares, we'll take a short 5-minute recess. Please be back here at 7 minutes, 8:45, please.
That's fine.
I'd like being able to strike sales and consumption. That may work.
Yeah. I'm just not into micromanaging businesses. I'm like, it's like, it's hard enough to make it successful, right? And we want them to be successful. Yeah, we want them to.
To speak forms, David, from the previous one, but I only have one to speak on this issue. Oh, I see another one coming up.
Another two?
Another two on their way, and here we are. Okay. Our next issue for discussion is 11D03 Lowney Architecture for modifications to the approved design review for the Safeway grocery store. Staff? can we
Yes,
have a
just
report?
briefly. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. These are changes that are considered administrative changes in nature, as these plans are being refined as they prepare to submit for a plan check and building permits and initiate their construction early in 2013. Our practice in Los Altos, though, is when changes like these that would otherwise be approved administratively are submitted and don't trigger a formal application modification process, that we would bring these to the Architecture and Site Review Commission as a informational item and to give the committee an opportunity to provide input into the changes. So since the ANS has now been reconstituted and DRC does residential and not commercial, we brought it to the full Planning and Transportation Commission. In short, the changes which were directed by Safeway, and they'll present the changes in more detail, were to affect a better floor plan use for the store and for shoppers. But essentially what it does is it takes the escalator entrance off of the State Street main entrance and swaps that with the elevator entrance that's adjacent to Parking Plaza 7 at about mid-store and just replaces those two. So the resulting business or building changes are a result of that primary change. But one of the benefits of the project is it really then creates a much more pedestrian entrance at the State Street, which is the downtown core entrance. It takes the glass lobby that previously accessed the escalator and opens that, so now you can have covered bicycle parking under that open lobby area, have some pedestrian benches, and just create a more open corner there. It also enlarges the second floor terrace significantly and creates a larger outdoor dining and sitting activity there. So those two things do tend to appropriately make a more pedestrian concentrated entrance at State Street and then put the escalator with the glass tower down at the Plaza 7 entrance. So we do support the changes, and I'll let Safeway now present it, and we'll be available for questions.
Okay, the applicant, William?
Good evening.
My name is Bill Carazella. I'm a real estate manager for Safeway. And with me tonight to support me if we need some questions answered is Tim Sloat from Lowney Architecture. As was mentioned, we have looked into some refinements for this plan. I'd like to first update you on our current schedule and where we're at today, and then what we're asking for permission to add to the plan. Right now, we're in the process of creating construction drawings for the project. We're committed to our current schedule, which would be to start the store in January of 2013 with a planned opening in November of 2013. Our intent is to move forward with the approved plan, but we would like permission to move forward with these refinements because we believe it creates a better project for Safeway and the City of Los Altos. Just to remind you, there are no changes to the building size, parking count, drive aisles, traffic circulation. In general, the site plan remains identical with a few small changes. The interior design process at Safeway is always looking to improve our projects, and that's what's essentially happened here. As we started looking at the store internally, we saw some refinements we could make, and then we took that to say, how do we make this flow into the downtown area better? And I think we've come up with an outstanding plan that does that. So I'm going to take you through that briefly. What we'll do basically is, as the plans in front of you show, is we have the approved plan generally on the top of each page and the proposed plan on the bottom, so you can see sort of a before and after, if you will. Why are we proceeding to make this change? First of all, is to improve the interior customer flow within the store. That's not really of concern to you as Planning Commission members, but it's something I'll just give you a brief background on so you understand the intent behind what we're proposing to do here this evening. And the second part is really we saw as an opportunity to meet some of the objectives of the community, which is to create a gathering place, a place where there's an outdoor place for people to go eat, to sit and have coffee or lunch. And I think we created a really cool entranceway and terraceway, which the visuals are outstanding, and our architect has done a phenomenal job at tremendous amount of iterations getting to the point where we got to today. So this looks like a lot of scribble, but essentially what you have is the top is what was approved or what we intended to do internally with the approved plan. And as we looked at this more closely, and what really spawned this is we opened our first podium store in Hawaii last November. And once you have that open for a few months, you start to say what's working, what's not working. And one of the things that we got focused on here was the escalator. If you look up in the top right corner, you'll see the pedestrians come in that escalator, and they kind of conflict with pedestrians or with customers that are leaving the store outside of the checkouts there. And we thought, well, how can we improve that? So we flip-flopped the escalator and the elevator. And you can see in the lower plan, right where the blue line starts, where you come up the escalator, you're dropped right into the produce department. And it creates a much better flow internally. We've also done some things to make the produce department a little more customer-friendly, where it's lower gondolas, so it's easier to see rather than this sort of boxy interior. Same thing on the right side of the store with the deli. Just generally speaking, inside it works much better for us. It's a really improved plan. So how does this affect the building from the outside? And that's what we're here, obviously, to discuss. What I have basically is the left or the south side of the building, and I'll share the right side as well. I'm going to step it back to the south side here briefly. This compares the approved plan, which is above, and below is what we're proposing on that south or southeast corner. And you'll see the enclosed glass way up, which enclosed the escalator. That's moved over to the center, or more to the right center of the building, and you see in the lower drawing here. So that's kind of a general overview of the facade of the building. I'm going to get into the specifics of each area briefly. This is a view of the entranceway that is across from lot number 7, which is On the top, we had the elevator there. So you see a view from a couple different angles of what that would look like per the proposed plan. Below, you see the glass element there, and now that is inside there is the escalator. On the outside, the entryway is not that different in these two plans. As we shift to the southeast corner, you can see the above plan, and probably the top right corner and the bottom right are the two most significant elevations to view the main points that are impacted this evening. You can see in the top plan we have a terrace there, and below it is an enclosed area for a vestibule to enter the escalator area. It's blocked by the tree to the left of the building, but there is a stairway, an emergency exit stairway that is there. In the bottom drawing, you see what we've created, a more vibrant corner there. We have a plaza area at street level, and we have increased the size of the terrace up above. It doesn't come any further forward, but it does go to the left or south of the building and follows all the way along that side, overhanging the side. So we added a lot of space there for additional gathering. To the right of the plaza area downstairs is a stairway, and then you have the proposal to add the elevator there as well. So we thought that really matched and fit in and complemented the other uses in this area of First Street and State Street, and we really wanted to get on board this program of creating gathering spaces and community gathering type of situation to invite more people to our store, obviously. So this allows people to come to this area, to climb the stairs, to come in and get a quick coffee or lunch, to eat it on the upstairs terrace or back down in the plaza area. Other types of changes, I think you can visually see most of the significant changes. The columns there are moved 4 feet back from the sidewalk. As I mentioned, that stairway to the left is gone, which improves the visual from straight out on First Street looking in. The result of this plan, we think, is that we have a more attractive and customer-friendly store. We've created a retail center that connects in a friendlier way to the neighboring properties and the downtown area. And we've created a gathering place with additional amenities. The bike racks are now enclosed, or I shouldn't say enclosed, but they're under cover instead of out in the open. And we've added 3 bike racks. We've added some benches and potted plants. So overall, I think this is a very nice refinement and improvement to what we have proposed already, and we're seeking your permission to go forward with this. There are 2 pieces, or 2 just technical things, or housekeeping items I would just like to draw your attention to. First is, because we have created this outdoor plaza area and outreach discussions, we would be willing to impose a restriction of housing any carts. This was a concern that was raised through the process, and we definitely want to comply with that and agree to not storing any carts in the public area. We have storage areas under the stairs. There's no intent to do that. There's no reason to do that. But just to, belt and suspenders approach, we'd like to add that condition. And then we want to make sure that if for whatever reason if this was approved and for whatever reason this might be appealed and denied, that we'd like to retain the right to continue or just verify that we have the right. I believe we do, but just legally I'd like to have a condition that allows us to go back to the old plan. We don't have any intention to go in that direction, but we are committed to a schedule, and if this thing, I don't imagine what could happen that would play this out in a would delay this substantially if you were to approve it, but we would at some point say we have an approved plan and we're going to go full speed ahead with that. So I just want to retain that as an option as part of an approval if you were to approve this plan.
It's good for 3 years.
With that, I open it up for questions and anything I can help you understand.
It looks like we probably need to go down the whole thing. Am I pretty much everybody's going to want to talk to him?
No.
Not you, Mike. Okay, then we can start with you, Mike.
Sure. I have a question about your diagram A2.2. I think these are just minor errors that were in the diagram, but I just wanted to just clarify that. And that is on the stairway on the opposite end. Oops, you went by it.
I went by it?
Yeah.
Okay. A2. I can't see the label.
Keep going. One more. Right there.
Okay.
So on the bottom, right here,
Yes.
I'm concerned because that's a stairwell, and it looks like there's some sort of shelving that's going to be blocking the door there.
Right.
And that it's an emergency exit, and I would expect that would not be something you would have in the drawing.
Right. That's something that I've talked to my design person internally about already, and we're prepared to address that.
And then the bottom, it looks like there's a door that comes out of the second floor that's on the bottom of that, which is that right there.
Yeah, I must have been thinking of the council meeting.
And I'm not sure what that is either.
I am not sure
I think it's a lack of reconciliation of the drawings. There's an elevator in the middle of the dairy case, too. I think there needs to be a little cleanup.
Well, actually, that makes sense because that's the storage, the freight elevator.
I don't think it belongs in the dairy case. I think it should serve the dairy case.
Anyway, I just wanted to, that was my concern that
Some drafting.
there were some drafting
Gotcha.
errors in this plan that I'm very supportive of this, but I just wanted to bring those to your attention. The other question I had was on the diagrams. I'm not sure if that was because you're only dealing with those shift, but the lighting and the light fixtures on the outside, and maybe this is that part of another diagram of what the street lighting will look like? Because none of the diagrams show lights along the street.
The lighting along the street, I don't know if we have a specific plan here, but I think that would be approved when we come in with building plans. And I spoke with my design manager about that. All of our lights are going to be, I think we spoke about this, where the lights are going to be designed to shine down and stay on the property, even the lights that will add to the terrace as well, to make sure that
From what
light
Bill
stays
just
on
said,
property.
did you want to declare that you had an ex parte
Oh,
discussion?
and yes, I did have an ex parte discussion. I'm sorry. I'm new to the commission, but I did meet with the...
And I want to disclose that also. I met them this morning.
Well, that's fine. Everybody, when you speak, please, if you
Okay.
had an ex parte, it'd be good to open your discussion with that. Did you have other things on your plate, Mike? No. John, did you have stuff you wanted to go through?
So I also had an ex parte discussion with the applicant several days ago, and nothing that's come up that wasn't covered in the presentation or staff report. However, I'm just looking for a little bit of clarity here. You made a comment about no storage under the stairs, and I'm
Cart
not
storage, they said.
cart storage under which stairs?
The stairs to the, if you look on the top right of the bottom plan, you'll see there's a stairway there that is adjacent to the plaza. Underneath those stairs is where there's a cart storage area. And there was a concern raised that carts might be stored out in that plaza area. Now, our employees would have no reason to do that because they're collecting carts. I'm going to bring up the site plan here to, might be a little easier to see. Yeah, not really. Again, though, to the top right of the bottom plan there, next to the elevators there is a cart storage area. It's within the parking area. It's not in the plaza. It's segregated from that. And the intent is any carts drawn or gathered in the parking area would be put there for customers to gather them before they get into the elevator and go upstairs. And we have no intent to put carts out in the plaza area. We don't want them out there, and we're willing to put a condition that says we will not do that.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify exactly what you meant and where. Thank you.
Jim?
I've also had ex parte conversations with them. They have not disclosed to me any information there that's actually not presented in here as well. A couple of clarifications. The escalator on the bottom floor, is that actually equipped with a way to actually move the cart between floors? Is that basically what
Yes,
that
it is.
Okay. And then the question I had, both for staff as well as for the architect, is the placement of the handicap spots, whether it's actually more appropriate to actually put them closer to the elevator or not?
Staff, is this a code-compliant application as it shows the way the handicap is?
It should be, but some of the comments that were pointed out tonight, these are not the final construction documents yet. The final construction documents will be plan checked by our building staff and our engineering staff and our structural engineering staff. So if they're, and there's very strict requirements with where the handicap parking has to go. So if they're not acceptable, they'll have to be relocated, but that will be looked at.
Okay, that's all.
Jerry?
The only thing I can disclose is I met with them, as I do with every important applicant, prior to coming here, and I didn't see or hear anything that I'm not seeing or hearing now.
I, too, had an ex parte meeting with the applicant, who was very diligent in meeting with everybody. I have 3 questions, all of them really for the architect, Bill. So one of them has to do with the rise to run in the public stair adjacent to the area that's now where the elevators are, because I appreciate what Bill was talking about as an opportunity for someone to go up the stairs with their own feet, grab a cup of coffee, and sit down. But the stair has to be of a relatively shallow pitch, so people are encouraged to use it. So you don't have to answer it. I'm sort of telling you to be aware of that. I do have a question about, on sheet A 2.2, how to describe where it is. My question has to do with the changes to the exterior elevations, which we can all see on A 3.2, that there's a great deal more glass in the current proposal in the active Safeway floor as opposed to the garage. But when I was on the plan sheet and I was looking at the pilasters and counting where things were, it appears to me that there's glass with people in the toilet rooms, which I'm a little concerned about. And there is some mystery furnishing against what is supposed to be glass. I'm bringing this, and that's between pilasters 1, 2, 3, and 4 from the right-hand corner on sheet 3.2. The reason I'm concerned about this is the current Safeway, which is being remodeled for a number of reasons, has a visual problem in that the cases where they are displaying goods for sales inside back up against the glass now. It's incredibly unsightly. And so in the area, if you go to drawing 2.2 on your display, okay, behind the first 2 trees on the left, what are those little squares? Because they are in front of the windows.
It's true. I can't say exactly because I'm not a store designer, and that's sort of in the purview of store design. But our understanding, and which is why it's reflected in this elevation, is that those will all be low shelves or some slightly higher shelves that are clear with floral or things like that on it. There are no solid shelves blocked up there, like the current situation. Nothing like that.
Because I'm concerned because there is a certain inaccuracy to the very attractive elevation that shows people standing adjacent to the window, when in fact, on this small-scale drawing, they can't be within 4 feet of it. So I'm just mentioning that in passing. This may be an artifact of the drawings changing very quickly, but if your intent is that there be increased glass in that north area of the store function, then I think it's important that the functions behind the glass be coordinated so that the toilet room is not actually behind glass that goes down to 3 feet.
Yes, yes. And part of the reason you do not see people in the second bay in when you go from the right is because that is the toilet room and floral storage. And that glass, unfortunately, has to be spandrel glass.
Okay.
So that's not... We try to put people in places to know where you could see through clearly.
Great.
And, of course, when you look at the building elevation, you see straight through. You don't get a perspective sort of,
Well, and maybe the drawings can be marked, well, they will be. You will say spandrel glass versus clear when they go into the city.
They will.
Okay. If there are no further questions for the applicant, I have a few requests to speak, not too many. First will be Jim Wing, followed by Brooke Ray Smith.
I'm Jim Wing. I live on Milverton Road. We have a design that is out of balance. 4 years ago, David Gates, at the intersection of State and First, presented some string lights. This was a grid pattern, a square grid pattern, lying kind of within the intersection, with 4 adjacent support poles. Today, we have, say, the corner, the intersection, which is really the northeast corner where the 3-story building is. That 3-story building has a 7.5-foot overhang over the sidewalk. Therefore, the pole has to be relocated around the corner and down about 20 feet. So therefore, one thing out of balance. The corner at, we'll call it where the First and Main building, the Morris building, the drawings you looked at last meeting. That corner has an existing pole, that support pole, which is in the new Safeway right turn lane. So therefore, the Morris drawings you saw last week move that pole, in this case, around 30 feet to the south, just downstream of the crosswalk. Now, what you have on your agenda tonight is the 4th support point, which is really the Safeway corner. And as you see in the drawings, no support. And that has to be provided. Now, it is kind of a problem to do this. Now, Council, a couple months ago, approved that support point on the Safeway balcony. And that was kind of a verbal. And yet, we do not see any detail as to exactly where that is. If you go back to the pole, we have the California Vehicle Code, which has pedestrian visibility requirements, which just about eats up all the city right-of-way on that corner. So therefore, Safeway, more than likely, if you go back to a pole, which is kind of blocking this open plaza, you will have also something that's on their property and not on the city right-of-way. So it is a design problem that, since they made a change at this corner, that I feel needs to be worked out. Now, I have tried with council to suggest to eliminate the street lights, string lights, string lights.
What are string lights? Excuse me for interrupting.
Well, they're not quite Christmas lights.
Oh, the Tivoli lights.
It's on the website, and the picture on the website is a bulb. Technically, they are a 3-watt bulb and about 100 lumens, but they have some size, and there's 400 of them, or 442
It's all
of them.
new to me. And what's their purpose?
The original intent from David Gates was to, at nighttime, it was kind of dark down First Street. So as you come in, he wanted something to draw attention to basically the state, to let everybody at night know there is another street other than Main. So that was the core intent and why they were put in.
Lighting.
And they would go from where to where?
Okay, now this is they fill the whole intersection.
It was a box that defined state.
Yeah, basically it's a rectangular box with diagonals. And so it glows. There's quite a bit of lumens there. So this problem needs to be worked out. It does affect the corner view, and there is not an easy solution that is pretty or doesn't degrade to the Safeway look. And also, when you move the pole around the corner into the Safeway green area, now you're starting to interfere with the look of the arch that's over there. So. From my personal standpoint, and it'd be a tough recommendation, I admit, is it may be time to consider removing them. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff, can you give us a little insight on this David Gates's enhancement of the State Street intersection?
The original downtown intersection and First Street designs had the Tivoli lights crisscrossing all of the downtown intersections, and then the First and Main and First and State intersections. And then that was scaled back for functional reasons at the Main Street intersection and for cost reasons at the downtown intersection locations, which would have been a nice element downtown, but they were kept in the project for the State and Main intersection, and that still is intended to occur with the next phase of the First Street project, and our engineering staff is aware of that and is coordinating that with this project.
Okay, so the engineering staff is coordinating with the Safeway project. Okay, thank you. The next request to speak is from Brooke Ray Smith, followed by Maddie McBurney.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brooke Ray Smith. As you know, I work for the Passerelle Investment Company, and I'm an urban planner there. And so speaking on behalf of Passerelle, we met with Safeway today as well. They were really great about sharing their ideas. We have several comments, 2 very positive comments, 1 point of clarification, and 2 recommendations. First, we do very much like the new store layout. We think it's going to be better circulation and create a much more modern, productive feel inside. We also like the increased second floor balcony with, you'll notice, an outdoor fireplace, which is a pretty cool design feature. One question is, would that outdoor space be open 24/7? Or is there, when Safeway's not open, is that also still available for public use? The point of clarification is whether the proposed relocation of the escalators to the mid-block area, might that place an additional burden on Plaza 7's parking? If that sort of becomes the primary entrance, is it going to be much more likely that Safeway customers are going to want to park in Plaza 7? And what implications does that have to the city's parking supply? And then 2 concerns for which we also have recommendations to help alleviate is that the proposed new plan shows a significantly greater quantity of signage on the exterior. I don't know if you noticed, but there's a Safeway sign, there's Starbucks, there's a Signature Cafe sign, and they're all now on the exterior of the building. This sort of starts creating more of a strip mall type feel, which might not be exactly what we want to see downtown. So we recommend less exterior branding signage, more along the lines of the existing approved plan. And then the last comment is relating to this handout that I gave you. The proposed plaster-clad elevator shaft at First and State that's in the proposed design, we think is a step down aesthetically from the approved plan that has a glass facade at that intersection. The architectural quality and visual interest of intersections are so extremely important to the downtown because that's where the most people are passing by, both on foot and in cars. And then additionally, the city has spent so much money already and is about to spend more on First Street improvements and at that intersection of First and State as well. So having a beautiful angle into the Safeway at that corner, we think is very important. And to have it just be plaster without as many windows is not a step up, in our opinion. So we wonder if maybe Lowney would be able to explore some ideas for increased glass or windows on any of those frontages. I mean, along the lines of the Councilmember Packard's office has a glass elevator. Glass elevators are possible. They are a little bit more expensive, but in the interest of having a beautiful product downtown that's really going to serve our community well and be visually interesting, that's something that I would hope you might want to consider.
Thank you.
Question for Brooke.
Yeah.
They left the Area 151.
Oh, I can take that.
Could you take that, please?
Yeah.
Maddie McBurney?
Hi, I'm Maddie McBurney, 149 Dowd Drive, and I'm here to talk again about public art. I really love the second floor, that it's more open, a beautiful patio, beautiful open space. I would, and down below as well, but I'd like to see, as Brooke Ray, I echo her signage. I noticed the same thing, that there's a lot of signage that's just branded and it's just a bit much. But the part on the lower level, I'd like to see some public art there, either a mosaic project, mural project, or a sculpture. I'm not sure if developers are required to contribute to public art at all for our city, but I really believe that that's an opportunity for us. This is a whole new building, and it'd be awesome if we could bring some beautiful art, either in mural, mosaic, any form, sculpture. All right, that's it.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, one more thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Artistic bike racks. So if the bike racks that are going in could have some sort of artistic flair to them, that would be awesome too, as opposed to just the black hoops.
I have no more requests to speak from the audience, so I'm going to close the public hearing. And Malka, would you like to start?
Sure. So I met with the applicants this morning. I would like to concentrate on the left side of the building, which is the corner. I think that's where the most change is. I personally really like the open terrace. They have that two-sided fireplace on that terrace. The way they've extended the balcony on the left side and eliminated that stair. If you look at the elevations, just the flat elevations, you see the difference, which is sheet 3.1. The initial first approved plan has that stair, which was the exit stair, kind of sticking out. And then if you look further down, which is proposed now, that stair is gone. And that actually makes a very big difference in my eyes, because it makes it very friendly. People can hang out there. They've made it wide enough that they can actually have tables, and it's not just a small width that nobody's hanging out there. I really like the idea of which we wanted to incorporate initially, but it didn't happen, which is that they've taken away the storefronts from underneath that balcony. So it's become more of a public space, which kind of draws the people in. And then that stair, which was that exit stair, is now tucked within the footprint of the building. So even though they're bringing people in and people have the access to actually, just go up to the cafe if they want, but it's a very inviting corner in my eyes. I really, really like the improvement it's giving. I like the overhang they've done with the facade behind the, at the patio, right underneath the overhang. They have, if you look at the way they've treated the window, it's actually not that much glazing. I'm talking about right where you would enter from the daily or the cafe onto the balcony. That glazing has been reduced, but in its place they have an access plus that fireplace, which I think makes a very big difference for people who'll be hanging out here. I do have one concern. In the original design, we had the corner, then we had the glass structure, and then we had the rest of the building. Even though it was Safeway, it was divided as if there were three separate buildings. And if you look at it, the glass structure read as Safeway that you'll see in San Francisco, that they didn't have much of a street front, so that's Safeway. But the corner building kind of looked on its own. In this new proposed design, I love how our guidelines have worked kind of automatically in this corner, where we are bringing in the pedestrians, we are making it very friendly corner. It's not that, even though the entrance is not there, it just feels more inviting. But the elevator shaft, I wish it was treated a little bit more differently, where either the color or the height of that tower could have eliminated that long railway track feel that right from this corner onward just looks like the same building, versus if they had just divided it as they had in the first proposal. I don't believe we need to, the glass enclosure which has moved down, I think it blends in really nicely with what's happening down below. But I don't think we need to introduce more glass here, but I personally would have liked to see that distinction with that tower being treated with different material or color or a little bit of a different height, just so we can break that look of something going linear from that point onwards. Apart from that, I really like the flow. I was looking at the floor plan, and as a shopper, I love that feel. It's more of a wandering feel. You can really pick and choose your fruits and kind of have fun kind of talking to your neighbors, versus like this long aisle where you really don't get to interact with anybody and just go and do your business and get out, basically. So I really like the improvement, but I just wish we could see a little bit more distinction on that tower.
Mike?
I really like what they've done by shifting the two focuses, and I re-echo the notion that our design guidelines really in that corner of First Street and State now, it really blends into more of a village atmosphere than it was before. My concern is very similar in that tower, the elevator tower, that it'd be different than the rest of the building in some way. Either the brick coming up, or I'll leave I'll leave the architect to figure out what to do, but it would be really nice that area looked different than the rest of the building, to kind of, again, make it look more like a village area. My other concern is that corner, I'm not sure how much traffic's going to come through there pedestrian-wise, and I'm not sure whether the benches make sense, or I'm an advocate for bike parking and making it easier for the bike commuter or the bicyclists to come through that area, because I think that's where they're going to come. I re-echo the sentiment that parking lot 7 is going to become the major thoroughfare to get into the Safeway, and I'm really concerned about not only the shopping carts getting out now through that area and getting out into city lots, and how's that, I know Safeway's made a commitment to try to collect those, but I can foresee that now becoming a real gateway to the rest of the city. That was about it. That's it for me.
Okay, John?
So generally, I'm supporting the changes here. With regard to the far left corner, I would continue to like to see that livened up with seating, because I think so that whether people are buying sandwiches upstairs and eating on the upstairs patio, or buying sandwiches from Safeway and eating on the downstairs patio, or people simply finding a way to meet. We've heard very loud and clearly from the community that the community wants places to congregate, and I would like to see a treatment more than just benches on that entrance. I don't know where the right place for bicycle parking is, so I have the advantage of living close enough to town that I can walk, and so I'm the wrong person to ask that question. I would like to make sure that whatever we do in terms of treatment on that area, that it not be a place that boxes of pumpkins and boxes of firewood get stacked, and errant shopping carts, that it be kept as a place that's inviting and enjoyable. I agree, even though I'm not necessarily a fan of large quantities of glass, I do agree with some of the comments and the drawing. I'm actually a little surprised that I agreed with what Brooke Ray Smith offered in terms of some contrast on the elevator and perhaps even on the pharmacy, or actually that's not pharmacy, that's whatever that is on the far left side on the second floor. I think looking at the material selection for either or both of those might be good. With regard to the flow in the store, as a former finalist for Safeway, for shopper, super shopper, anything that makes it harder for me to fill my cart and be the winner, I'm against. But that comment is completely irrelevant in the context of this proposal. So generally I support it. I would say with regard to Lot 7, I think I understand my fellow commissioners' concern. I think, however, what will trump that is that for most shoppers who have carts, people don't like to push carts across streets, and I think that will mitigate some of that. I know myself when I'm going in for something quickly, I may park in Lot 7, but if I'm really going with a cart, it's too much work to go across the street. So
Jim?
Thanks, Phoebe. Yeah, I mean, I think that this project is an improvement over the previous version. I have a couple of comments. With regards to the signage, I mean, I'd like to see it a little bit more minimal in nature. And as I look at the picture, I mean, actually, I think that the correct discussions at this point is for Safeway to actually have it directly with the city staff in terms of what the appropriate level of signage would actually be. In addition to that, I'm looking at the proposal from Brooke in terms of the corner, and I have to say that it actually is a lot more appealing with the glass. So even though it's actually not part of the current discussion, because, I mean, obviously the current plan has it approved for the previous version, I would like to provide it as an option of, that the Safeway would consider it as a potential upgrade to even the existing proposed design to actually include that in a more dramatic feel. And that probably includes glass or some other design element of that.
Jerry?
First of all, I think that the community and the commission here are very fortunate to have two, not one, but two architects on staff. On staff, because I don't know about you folks out there, but I learn a lot I look at these plans, and I look at plans every day, again, because I'm in real estate, but they see things that I don't see. I just, that's the Peter principle. I rise to my level of incompetence when it comes to that. But so I really appreciate you two pointing things out to me that I would never notice the bathroom, and I wouldn't have seen that. So great. I love this plan. It's again exactly from a real estate guy what I want to see downtown. It's a place where people are going to come to gather, and they're going to come to this area with diverse interests about what they want to do downtown. It's not like, and I hope I'm not offending anybody, it's not like my wife does it, well, I'm going to go downtown and get my nails done. Well, she goes downtown, gets her nails done, and comes home. Well, I don't think people are going to come to Safeway and say, I'm going to go and buy a banana and walk and go back home. I think they're going to congregate. And congregate stimulates activity. And picture this. I mean, First Street is going to be completely changed. We're going to have offices. I mean, and not just any kind of offices. We're talking about stealing the tenants from Sand Hill. We're talking about people that come here that are going to spend money. They're going to come and buy lunches downtown. Then you're going to have a big condo unit that's going to have people that are going to use Bubble and area of 151. I mean, we are moving in the right direction, and I love where this is going. The proposed corner, both up and downstairs, everybody's gave their opinion, and that's the one thing I could see on the plans. It's big. It's bigger upstairs. It's bigger downstairs. Again, more people. I love it. What else? Oh, did I say that I had an ex parte discussion?
We had that all. Everybody had an ex parte. It's good. You did a good job.
Don't want my hands slapped. And I did wonder why we replaced glass with stucco. I mean, I like the glass if I had a choice, personally. Okay.
Thank you. I also think this is a tremendous improvement from the approved design, and I feel as a general consensus this is not going to be a problem for you guys. I actually had a concern which had to do with someone who asked, actually Brooke, whether the space in that under area was going to be open 24/7. We have from time to time had a problem with homeless in our town, and I think it might turn out that Safeway may need to control that site. They are open now 24/7, so maybe it won't be a problem, but there may be a time where there may be an issue where they want to control that. So I can see it being open all the time. I don't think we need to mandate it, but I think they need to be sensitive to the fact that there may be someone sleeping in the pumpkin bins at some point. I think having the escalators and the glass tower in the middle of the building facing parking lot 7 is superb, because what it does is it draws people, because when people see movement, it catches your eye. And I think it's an incredible improvement from the town's point of view. I think that from Safeway's point of view, I'm not in the supermarket layout business, but the fact that there isn't a conflict with people arriving and leaving seems to me a no-brainer. It's definitely an improvement. I think that I understood why the elevator tower became solid. I think that there's enough glass in general, but I think it would be a good idea to have the architect look at improving the aesthetic of the elevator tower, and keeping in mind that it would be a good place for public art might not be a bad thing. Similarly, the arch, which is a superb concept, could also be a form of public art. And so I can support this revision with the comment that I think that the elevator tower might need a little working with staff to improve its overall look, whichever way staff and the architect feel comfortable doing. I have a question. I think there is the signage did seem, we have creeping signage. I think I would support a condition that asked staff to review with the applicant how many exterior advertising signs there were, since we're sensitive to that. And other than that, I think I'm delighted that the applicant came back with an improved plan. I'm delighted that he can stay on schedule so that we can be without our local supermarket for the shortest possible time. And I urge my fellow commissioners to deal with this expeditiously so that they can jump right on it.
So would you entertain a motion at this
Well,
point?
can I ask one quick question?
Of course.
And this is really for staff, because when I looked at these drawings, and I'm hoping that somebody's looked at it, which is the sun reflecting off the glass back onto the street, and whether that's a hazard or not. Is that something that staff will look at or has looked at? Just to make sure that we're not causing traffic?
Yeah, we can take a look at that and report back. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we need to deal with it, but I just want to make sure that staff.
Well, in the same way that staff is paying attention to the string lights, the Tivoli lights, if you also pay attention to reflectivity and the kind of glass going in.
And the comments on the lighting and the signage, that's still yet to be plan checked, so that would be the next step.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what we wanted to do was express our concerns, and we have. Okay, I will entertain a motion.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to approve the plan revisions as included in the memorandum before us, further directing staff to work with the applicant to revisit the elevator tower and there was one other condition, working with staff on the signage.
And bike racks.
And
Bike racks.
Bike racks.
And bike racks.
I'll second that.
Can I ask in terms of matter of process? I mean, if Safeway comes back with even further revisions, do we need to again review that? Or can we actually provide conditions that allow them some flexibility in terms of...
Well, if we say work it out with staff, then we are not saying bring it back here.
Okay.
And so it really is up to you, commissioners. If you feel that whatever changes they might propose to make to the elevator tower are significant enough that you want to see them again, you can condition it. But if you feel that this is a relatively minor modification and it's well within staff's purview, then we can leave it as it is.
Okay, that's acceptable.
Okay, so we have a motion and we have a second, I believe. We'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Passes 6-0. Thank you very much. We have no further items on our agenda. Staff, do you have anything you would like to share with us for future meetings or anything that we need to know about? In that case, meeting's closed.
We don't have anything to report.